theyeshiva.net.
Okay, we'll begin a new Maimer today. I know you're not done yet with Bidur Sheni. Some of us are not done yet with Bidur Rishon. But the journey continues. Page 102. It's a Maimer in Torah, Parshas Shmos. Vayomer Hashem Elav Misam Pela Adam. Nun Aleph, column 4. Nun Aleph Amud Daled, page 102. On top it says Shmos. The left column, Vayomer Hashem Elav. It's close to the top of the page. Okay, this Maimer of the Baal HaTanya is also the Baal HaElula of today, the yard site today of the Baal HaTanya, was said in the year Tovkuf Samach Hei, which would be 1805, although some dated to 2 years earlier, Tovkuf Samach Gimel, 1803. It's two manuscripts, so there is a conflict about that, but it's one of those two, either Samach Gimel or Samach Hei. The focus of it deals with a sugya, a theme that pervades both Parshas Shmos and also this week's Parshas Va'era, Moshe's difficulty in verbal communication. From the day that Hashem summons Moshe to become the leader and redeem the Jewish people, Moshe laments that he is a kvad peh or kvad lashon. He has a difficult mouth, a heavy mouth, and a heavy tongue, meaning it's difficult for him to communicate. There's different interpretations in the Mefarshim. What that means, if it was a, so to speak, a verbal defect, or as some of the Mefarshim say, the Even Ezra, the Chizkuni, that he couldn't speak the Egyptian language fluently, or different interpretations. But the bottom line is that Moshe complains that he's not the right person because he can't communicate. In Parshas Shmos, the first time he brings it up, because he brings it up a few times, in Parshas Va'era again, he says, Vani aral sfasayim, my lips are stuffed, my lips are plugged. But the first time Moshe brings it up is in Parshas Shmos, after Hashem says, I want to send you to Parah to redeem the Jewish people. And Moshe first says, who am I to go and take them out of Mitzrayim? And then he says that the Jews are going to ask me for your name. What should I tell them? And then he says, they're not going to believe me. And after everything, he says, finally, Lo yish dvarim anochi. I'm not a man of words. This is in Shmos. Not today, not yesterday, not the day before. Kvad peh, kvad lashon anochi. It's difficult for me to speak. So Vayomer Hashem Elav, Hashem answers, and this is the pasuk that this Maimer begins with. Misam pela adam. Who made a mouth for a person? Who created the human mouth? Mi yasam ilaim. Who creates muteness, person not to be able to speak, or cherish, or deafness, or fikeach, or the ability to see, or iver, or blind. Halay anochi Hashem. I'm the one who does it all. So therefore, go and I will be with your mouth. I will be with your mouth. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. Then Moshe comes up with a new idea and he says, send somebody else. Then Hashem gets upset and he says, Aaron will accept you and be happy. And as they say, the rest is history. Now, when we think about this, Moshe says, I can't speak. So Hashem says, Misam pela adam. Who gives a mouth to a person? Who makes a person mute, who makes a person deaf, blind, somebody to see, somebody blind. Halay anochi Hashem. The Pashtus, literally what he's saying is that the same person, not the same being, who caused you not to be able to speak normally, if I want, you'll be able to communicate. It's all for me. That's literally what he's saying. In other words, it's my mouth. I gave the mouth. So you're saying I can't speak. I'm the one sending you. I'm the one who made the mouth. Who give me some pelot. The Chaim asks a question here. Das Gehad der Shir, was das mir geschickt? You heard the Shir of the Chaim? Okay. The Chaim asks a question that l'cha'ira, it's the answer is a little distorted. Moshe says, I can't speak. Hashem says, I'll make you speak. He gives us a whole pilpul Let's get back to the creation. Who made a mouth? Who made somebody deaf? Who made somebody blind? Who made somebody see? I'm God. I'll be with your mouth. Just say, I'm the one who took away your ability. I'll give it back to you. You can't speak. I'll help you speak. A whole Torah, who created the mouth? Who created the vision? Who created deafness, which is the lack of the ability to hear? Who created blindness? And therefore, I'll be with your mouth. That's Chaim's question. It's a whole, you're complaining to God, I can't do it. You'll do it. We'll fix the problem. It doesn't work. We'll fix it. I know how to fix these things. He doesn't say that at the end. Even if he wants to give an introduction, how do I know how to fix it? How do I know how to fix it? Because I'm God. I made it. I can fix it. The one who made it usually can fix it. Doesn't always work with Jewish contractors, but usually the one who made it could fix it, yeah? So even if Zalzan, Hashem wants to give the background why he could fix it. But the punchline is, I'll fix the problem. That doesn't say clearly. This is Torah Chaim's famous question. Balatanya addresses even a more basic question. This is the mind. Vayomer Hashem elav mi sampela adam lahavin zeh. To understand this response or this exchange. Masha Amar Moshe. What does Moshe say? Lo yish dvarim anochi. I'm not a man of words. Ki chvad peh uchvad lashon anochi. My mouth is difficult, my tongue is difficult, my communication is difficult. What does Hashem answer? Mi sampela adam. Who created the mouth for the human being? The whole inyan, the whole exchange is difficult. Hashem is now giving him a tutorial that he created a person. He created the faculties of a person. Did Moshe not know this? It's like Hashem is telling him a big chiddush. By the way, let me tell you, I created the world in 6 days. One of the things I created with people, and one of the abilities from other billions and billions of abilities is they should be able to speak. So I'm telling you, okay, Moshe, go back to Bereshis. Starting to teach him Chumash from the beginning. It's like a big chiddush. Mi sampela adam. Who are you talking to? You think you're talking to Stam or Joe Schmo? I'm God. I know about speaking. I'm the one who created it. Like we say in Tehillim, yeah. Myotzerayin halayabit. What's the lashon over there? Hanoy ta'ozen halayishma myotzerayin halayabit hayosegoyim halayachich. And he says, "Hukulei muksha." Even his question is strange. You say, "Lo yish dvarim anochi." I can't speak. I can't communicate. I'm sending you. Ha'inyan yuvan al pi akdama. So the inyan will be understood with an introduction. Dehine isse b'sefer atmuna. It says in Sefer Atmuna, "B'hakdama l'tmuna gimel." Daf chav zayin chav tes lamed aleph. Shezeh ha'olam hu shmita shniya. Ulefaneh ha'yagam kein shmita achas. One of the earliest Kabbalistic works is a sefer called Sefer Atmuna. Atmuna means the sefer of figures, of picture, the sefer of a picture, of a figure. Because it explores the figure, the pictures, the tmuna, of the 22 letters of the Aleph base in great, great detail. It's attributed that the Sefer Atmuna was authored by Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana and Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, which means it dates from the second Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana is one of the Tanoim. We have the Tfilas of Nechunya ben Akana, and he is the author. So it says in the beginning, it's attributed to Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. Printed, it was more than 1,000 years later. But that's what it's attributed to the Tanoim, which would make it one of the earliest works of Judaism, and especially of the world of B'chlal of Yiddishkeit, and works, and especially of Kabbalah. The Sefer Atmuna postulates a fascinating idea, and that is that this world was not the first world. Shezeh ha'olam hu shmita shniya. This world is already a second Shemitah. Ulefaneh ha'yagam kein Shemitah achas. And before this world, there was another Shemitah. What do we mean by another Shemitah? Shemitah is usually the term for the 7th year in the unit of years that were counted in Eretz Yisrael. It says in Parshas Bahar, the way the Jews counted years were by units of 7. They came into Eretz Yisrael, you had 6 years, and then a 7th year, which was the Shemitah sabbatical year, and this went on 7 times, which made it 49 years, and then you had the Jubilee year, the Yovel, 50, and you started the count again of Shemitah. What he means by Shemitah here is he's using the term Shemitah not for a unit of 7 years, but for a unit of 7,000 years. Because 7,000 is also the concept of Shemitah. Each 1,000 is similar to a year, and then the 7th millennium is called the Shemitah. Like we say, Yom Shekulei Shabbos Menucha. So we have now, the world was created, in our number, the world is 5770, so we're in the 6th millennium. 5,770. The year 6,000, which is not, was? AD? Sorry, 5780, yeah. So very soon, we have, not very far away, begins the 7th millennium. When you come to the year 6,000, so 6,000 begins what's called the 7th Shemitah, the 7th millennium. So Adam, Rishon, and Chava created in the beginning of creation. So that's the 1st millennium. And so history continued until we have now the 7th millennium. Comes the Sefer HaTmuna and says, this is all the 2nd Shemitah. This is the 2nd unit of 7,000 years that we are operating in. And he says, he says, we're now Shemitah Shniya. Before this Shemitah, there was another Shemitah. The 7 years of Shemitah, why are our years you divided into 7? Why 7? 7 is generally a significant number, the 7 days of creation, which is why there are 7 days to each week, which also is not completely logical, why the week was divided into 7. Why not 8? Why not 6? Why not 9? Why not 10? There were a few attempts in history, especially by Comrade Stalin, to change the week, because the number 7 didn't really make sense, was it 7? But somehow it persisted. The week prevailed. It's based on, the Kuzari writes, based on Shivas Yimei Bereshis. So, and Shemitah is 7. So the Sefer HaTmuna says, because ultimately the world is a manifestation of the 7 midas, 7 building blocks of creation. The 7 midas, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus. And those are the 7 years of Shemitah. The last year, the last day, Shabbos is Malchus. The first is Chesed. Sunday is Chesed. It says in Zohar, Kol Yoima V'Yoima Avid Avidete, which means every day has a unique creation, created based on the midah, the emotion or the attribute of that day. So he says the first Shemitah came from Midas HaChesed, as a manifestation of the attribute of kindness. V'hashmitah the Achshav, the Sefer HaTmuna says, and the present Shemitah in which the Sefer HaTmuna is being written, which is our Shemitah. Our Shemitah. Ritzoyne Eloima, what does he mean Achshav? What does he mean now? Ritzoyne Eloima, he doesn't mean Achshav, the year he's writing. He means Shit Alfish Shnin Dahava Alma V'chat Chiruv. Expression of Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Lamed Aleph, that the world exists 6,000 years, Shit Alfish Shnin, 6 millennia, and then V'chad, and then there's 1 millennium, which is Chiruv, a time of desolateness, of destruction. Hu Midas HaPachad. This Shemitah comes from the attribute of pachat, the attribute of anxiety. Not anxiety, but fear or awe or strength. The Sefer says, and that's why good luck to all those who are born in this unit of 7,000 years. Its pathways are strong, kashim difficult, and royim sometimes very negative. The Hainu, what he means is in this unit of 7,000 years, you had the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, v'chuli. He brings obviously these 2 examples because they represented not just the churban of a home in Yerushalayim, but the ability for truth, holiness, goodness to be destroyed in our cycle of time. So the Sefer HaTmuna says the first Shemitah looked very different. It was a Shemitah that was a manifestation of Chesed. But this is the second Shemitah. And the second Shemitah is a manifestation of Midas HaGvura. Then there's a third Shemitah, another 7,000 years. That's Tiferes and then Netzach in height. Yeah. The first Shemitah predated Adam and Chava, of course. That's what the Sefer Atmuna postulates. The first week is not a week, it's 7,000 years. So there was a unit of 7,000 years that looked completely different. It came from Midas HaChesed.
What if there was 7,000 years in the first week? It's possible there was 7,000 years. Olam HaNeshamos was year 7,000. Hashem destroyed the whole world, and then there was a new Seder Bereshis.
Yeah.
Why are you saying that Sheshet Mei Bereshis was 7,000 years?
No, I'm saying we're in second Shemitah. The Sefer says that before that there was another Shemitah.
Shemei Bereshis, which was 6 days or whatever, or 6,000 years, but it wasn't the first Shemitah, right?
The second Shemitah, right?
But the first Shemitah predated Sheshet Mei Bereshis.
That's what it seems like. That's what it seems like, yeah. That it predated it, yeah. Masheke b'Shmitah Rishayna. We'll see in a moment. Masheke b'Shmitah Rishayna, the first Shemitah. This is quoting the Sefer Atmuna. The parentheses, the Balatanya is explaining. Masheke b'Shmitah Rishayna ha'isma midas ha'chesed. The first Shemitah came from Chesed. Ha'isa avoida ba'ofen acher. Says the avoida was completely different. V'gam ha'Torah ha'ya ba'ofen acher. They also had their own Torah. It's a different Torah. In other words, it was a Torah. He doesn't mean a different Torah, a different God. He means a different Torah. It was a Torah that was suitable for that Shemitah. It was a Torah that was suitable for that Shemitah. You could look over there for the details. It was a Shemitah that expressed complete goodness and grace and kindness. Yeah, Kach da Sefer Atmuna. This is the opinion of Sefer Atmuna. The Mekabalim after Sefer Atmuna followed this path. Ladun mizeh, and they deduced from this, Shemuchrich liyas eid chames shmitas achar shmitazu. If it's a shmita, it's a shmita. Shmita is a unit of 7. You have 1, you have 2, there's going to be another 5. Kitzarich liyas zayin shmitas keneged zayin midas alyanas. Because there's 7, it has to be 7 shmitas, keneged the 7 midas. Somehow all the 7 midas play the ukamar shekasum sham b'sefer atmuna, that it's keneged the 7 midas. So you're not stopping by the second midah, it's going to continue till Malchus. Which means, according to the Sefer Hatmuna, right, the world is 49,000 years. There's a 49,000 years because it's 7 times 7 until you come to Shnas HaYovel, the 50th year. This is the shit of Sefer Hatmuna, with the Mekabalim followed it. The Sefer Hatmuna brings, like the Mekabalim bring, a source for this in Medrash. The Medrash Rabbi famously says, in the beginning of Bereshis, it says, Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voiker. So the Medrash doesn't say Yehi Erev, Yehi Voiker. God said, let there be night, let there be morning. Yom Echad. It says Vayehi, which the Vav can turn it into the past. There was already night and there was already morning. Melamed, I quote the Medrash, Shaboyna Olam Hayaboyna Olam Misamachriva. That God built previous worlds and He destroyed them, and then in their wake of the aftermath of their destruction, He built a new world. Boyna Olam Misamachriva. According to, the language of the Medrash there is Boyna Olam Misamachrivan. Yeah. There were even Mekabalim who tained it. The Sefer Atmuna says this Shemitah is the second Shemitah. As he says, the Mekabalim Acharayin and the other Mekabalim, the Sefer Livnas HaSaper, who tained that this may be the 7th Shemitah already. This may be the 7th Shemitah, so that means Adam was created after 42,000 years. Yeah. According to the Sefer Atmuna, Adam was created after 7,000 years. The second Shemitah, we're in the second Shemitah, and then there's going to be another 5 Shemitahs to complete the 49,000 years. There's also a lashon over there in Medrash, Shahaya say, there was an order of time before this. Ad kan, what the Sefer Atmuna says. Now this, I'm going to give here a little this is more in parentheses, not so negated to the discussion, but it's interesting to mention that in the modern age, there were those who wrote about Yiddishkeit and Ashkafa that made a lot of use of this Sefer Atmuna. And you understand why. Because in the entire discussion of the age of the universe, right, that some of you are very busy with, so in the entire discussion of the age of the universe, this has major ramifications. Because what this basically says is that Rabbi Yisrael Lipschitz has a sefer, Tiferes Yisrael HaMishnayos, Yachin Boyas, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's one of the best Mefarshim HaMishnayos. So he writes he has an introduction in the Zikin Sanhedrin. This is how he deals with all the fossils. All the fossils, they say 40,000 years old, 50,000 years old. He says, of course, carbon dating. He says, look at the Sefer HaTmuna. He says, the Himalayas. He says, it's all from previous Shmittas. Sebegeblieben von alter Shmittas. That's what he says. He was a German Rav, and he dealt with a lot of Germany. Biblical criticism was at its peak in his day, in the 1800s. So Yisrael Lipschitz, the Tiferes Yisrael, from Germany writes this. Others also write this. He has a famous drush called Drush Ohr HaChaim about this in his Pirush in the Zikin before Sanhedrin, Hakdama to Sanhedrin. Yeah. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, Alav Shalom, who wrote a book on resurrection and the age of the universe, took the Sefer HaTmuna even a step further. He found an old Kabbalistic manuscript from a famous Kabbalist from the 1300s, which was very early on in Kabbalah, because the Arizal, who becomes the most famous Mekuba, lived only in the 1500s. 1572, he passed away. So this is the early 1300s. There was a Mekuba, his own Rabbi Yitzchak de Min Akku, Rabbi Yitzchak from Akku. And there's a manuscript that Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan found called Oitzer HaChayim. And he writes over there that whenever you're talking about pre-second Shemitah, don't count it in Adam Harishon's years. Adam's years. You have to count it in God's years. You have to count it in God's years. What are God's years? So there's the famous pasuk in Tehillim, Ki elef shanim beinecha ki yom esma. 1,000 years in your eyes is like yesterday, like one day. 1,000 years, like one day. And Rashi explains at length that there's yom, based on a medrash, that you could count it as a human count, and then 1,000 years is 1,000 years. From God's perspective, it's one day. Some want to connect this also with Einstein's theory of relativity in terms of time, how time changes with different speeds. It's a separate sugya. We learned about in another Maimer before Yom Kippur about Tshuva. Tshuva Kadma L'Olam, about Zman. So in any case, so Rabbi Yitzchak de Min Akku says, I'm going to tell you a secret. This is in his manuscript, Oitzer HaChayim, that all these years you have to count according to God's years, not according to Adam Harishon's years. He also holds that we're in the 7th Shemitah, not in the 2nd Shemitah, but in the 7th Shemitah. So Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says something very creative and very interesting. We see what he says. He says if we're in the 7th Shemitah, so that means 42,000 years passed before Adam. But for what type of 42,000 years? Not Adam's 42,000 years. God's 42,000 years. Our year is 365 days and a quarter. A quarter of a day. 6 hours. That's what the Rambam says. 365 days and a quarter of a day. So he says, if every day is 1,000 years, so he makes the cheshbon, so every day, and a year has 365 days and a quarter of a day. So you're dealing with every year is 365,250 years. Times 42,000 is 15 billion and a little change. And he says, look, 700 years ago, the Kabbalists gave the date that scientists who discuss the Big Bang give exactly the same date. That's the date they give for the Big Bang. That's the date they give more or less for the Big Bang, 15 billion years. He says this already was written 700 years ago by Rabbi Yitzchak of Akko based on the Sefer HaTmuna. Fascinating. Huh? Gerald Schroeder. Now, this is a perspective. Is it conclusive? Of course it's not conclusive. What he was trying to say is, Rabbi Kaplan was trying to say, that this has many ramifications when you talk about the age of the universe, in terms of a Jewish perspective and a biblical perspective, you see from this Sefer HaTmuna a whole new picture, that there was a whole life and a whole existence pre this existence. Okay. Now let's continue. Aval HaArizal Polygalza. The Arizal argues with this. Even though the Sefer HaTmuna says it, and other Mekabalim follow it, he argues on 2 points. The first idea he argues is there has to be another 5 Shmittas. He also argues that this world is the second Shemitah. If he argues on both of these things, so he just doesn't agree. He says, okay. He also holds that this world is a second Shemitah. The Arizal says that's where the Torah begins, not with an aleph, with a beis, bereshis. And the question, Yerushalmi already says, shouldn't the Torah begin with the first letter, not with the second letter? So the Arizal explains, because to tell you that this is the beis, this is beis reshis, this is the second attempt of creation, this is plan B. This is the second stage. Let's call it the second phase. This is bereshis. It's the beis. Why? There was already an aleph. The aleph we're not exploring now. We're starting with the beis. Like the Sefer HaTmuna says, there was a whole 7,000 years. Chesed Arizal agrees with this. Aval Pirish Arizal, but Arizal teaches the Eina Kavana Loimar Shaya Olam Gashmi Kam Olam Haza. The Achshavim Shamayim ve'eretz Gashmim ve'daimim Tzemei Chaim Medaber Ki Zeh Lo Hoyer Rak B'Shmita Zu Davka Levad. This is what the Arizal says. Don't think that this first Shemitah that we talk about was a physical world, cosmos, and physical planet like this world, meaning a physical heaven, a physical earth, daimim, tzemei, chaim, medaber, the inanimate, the botanic world, the animal kingdom, the human race, like it's mashma from Sefer HaTmuna, that there was a whole world with Teves and Chesed, and they had their own Torah. In other words, you had whatever, you had animals, you had people, you had a life going on, something was going on. No, that's only this Shemitah. Bereshis bara lekimus hashemayim v'saretz is a new phenomenon of this Shemitah. And our number would be 57, 80 years ago. So what do you say it's Bereshis? V'inyan ha-Shemitah shehoysel lefneizu hu inyan olam hatoyu. The Sefer HaTmuna, speaking about a Shemitah, it's referring to a world that we call Olam HaToyu, which is a spiritual concept, not a physical universe. The only physical universe is this universe. This was the first, and the time begins with our Brias Olam. Yeah, the Arizal says it's the second Shemitah. The second Shemitah. But what's Pshat second? Not second as in a sequence of numbers. There was a world before for 7,000 years. And that world, the dinosaurs died out. And then a whole new development happened. New creatures. Rather, no, the previous world we're talking about is not a world similar to our world. It's a spiritual reality.
Several didn't mention any of the details.
You're right. But some of Kabbalim, the Mashmaos was that it was physical, so that's what the Arizal says not. The Hainu, Inyan Zayin Malkin Kadmoyin the Toyu Shemesu. This is the concept that there were 7 kings, early kings, primordial kings of Toyu that died, based on the pasuk we learned in Parshas Vayishlach. Ve'ela hamalachim Hashem molchu be'eretz Edom. Lifnei meloich melech lebnei Yisrael. They're the kings of Edom before the Jews had a king, and he lists there 7 kings, Vayimlech Vayamas, each one died and was succeeded by the next until the 8th one, Hadar. And over there it doesn't say Vayamas. So Kabbalistically, this represents 7 kings, or 7 spheres, or 7 concepts of Toyu, which went through what's called a Misa, a death. Sho'inyan spheres ruchnim kenoida. And each melech is not a physical king. According to the Kisvei Arizal, represents a spiritual sphere, a spiritual light or a spiritual energy. And our Shemitah, why are we calling it a second Shemitah? Because it's a whole new type of world. A world called the world of Tikkun, which was built post the world of Toyu. And when we say post, we don't mean post a physical world and then another physical world. Post it's a new concept. It's a new concept post-Tohu. That's what we mean post. Ukenoida ein belukut Torah Parshas Kedoshim ube'emek hamelech shar olam hatoyu perek menvav. Lukut Torah is from the Arizal, and emek hamelech is from the Talmidim. Reb Naftali Hirtz sharim hatoyu perek menvav ukenoida bekisrei Arizal, and this is known in Kisrei Arizal. But v'hinei shtei neshamas mishmita rishona. Dahainu mebchinas olam hatoyu shelifnei olam hatikun yordu v'nimshechu lamata l'shmita shniya shobchinas hatikun. It's fascinating. But there's two souls that came from Shmita Rishona, from the first Shmita, meaning from the world of Toyu pre-Tikkun, and they were transplanted, so to speak, into the second Shmita of Tikkun. V'hem Chanoich or Moshe. Two souls. The soul of Chanoich, discussed in Parshas Bereshis at the end, and the second soul, Moshe. Was epis Chanoich? Where does Chanoich come from? Chanoich ksiv, vayishale Chanoich es elikim ve'einenu. The expression by Chanoich is unique in the whole Chumash. No one gets the same title by everybody when you speak about the genealogy of Adam Arishan. So it always says, Sheis lived for 912 years, Vayomas, he died, yeah. He had a baby, and the baby lived, this child, he lived this amount of years, and he died, Vayomas. It comes to Chanoich, Yered gave birth to Chanoich. It says Chanoich lived 65 years and he gave birth to, he fathered Mesushelach. Vayishale Chanoich es elikim, and Chanoich walked with Hashem after he fathered Mesushelach another 300 years. And again, Vayishale Chanoich es elikim ve'einenu ki lakach es elikim. He walked with God, and then he's gone because Hashem took him. So the Balatanya teaches, Loimar shekvar yishalach es elikim b'shmita aleph. Vayishalach Chanoich es elikim is, he already once walked with God. He's an old soul. He's an old fossil, so to speak, an old soul fossil. He's not from here. Vayishalach Chanoich es elikim. V'chein b'Moshe ksiv min hamayim mishisiu. His name is Moshe because the daughter of Pari said, I bore him, I drew him out from water. On a literal level, of course, it means she saved him from the water. On a deeper level, it means Dahainu mishmita rishona. He was taken out. He comes from he's not from this society. He comes from a different shmita. He comes from the water. The first shmita we learned is from chesed. Water is associated, the quality of water is associated with the midah of chesed. Moshe comes from a different world, from a different planet, so to speak, from a different spiritual milieu. From where? Min hamayim. He comes from the shmita of chesed. He was drawn out of there and placed into a shmita which is actually not his origin. He was placed into this world. They were both transplanted into this Shemitah to repair the worlds. Their source is very lofty, because they come from a place that's higher than the Neshamos of this Shemitah. Dahainu, what do we mean higher? What's higher? What does it mean higher? Higher means always Shesham nimtza habittel harbe yosem masha nimtza b'Shemitah zu. The bittel in that Shemitah is much deeper than you'll have in this Shemitah. V'lachei nemar b'Moshe v'nachnu ma. Moshe says a few times to the Jews, and what are we? V'nachnu ma ki salinu aleinu. What are we that you're attacking us? V'ish Moshe anav ma'od. He was more humble than everybody else. These are all qualities of the first Shemitah. The sense, the experience of bittul, as he will explain over there, is in a different plane. Also, he saw there high neshamas even higher than him. And here he adds lemech. That's not what he means. Sometimes you see something and it changes you forever. Right? There's greatness, and then there's somebody who saw greatness. That also changes you. Not everybody is great, but if you've seen something, it touches you. It touches you forever. You can't be oblivious to it, right? Somebody, once you taste something, even if it's not part of your world anymore, it remains part of you. He says, from being in that Shemitah, you see certain things. He saw something. And that's why these Neshamos were transplanted to this Shemitah to be able to repair it. And were placed strategically at certain periods. Chanoich was placed right before the generation of the flood, when the world reached its ultimate shiflus, its ultimate lowliness. What's the word? Nadir. The nadir, its lowest point. Hashem said, the end of all flesh has come before me. Chanoich achieved a lot. Because of him, the world didn't return completely to chaos and void. We look at the Mabul like a destruction. He says, actually, Chanoich achieved a lot. He was massacring the world. That the world didn't. Hashem said, it's all over. Forget this whole thing is a mistake. Let's just go back to the drawing board. Let's go back to Shemitah Shayna. No. There was a Mabul, a mikveh. You had to cleanse the earth. But Noach and his family remained in the Teves so that life continued. Without Chanoich, there would be complete destruction. Even Noach and his children wouldn't remain there. Moshe was also strategically placed at a certain point in history, at the point of Galus Mitzrayim, to redeem the Jewish people, turn them into a nation, and ultimately that Matan Torah would happen through him, which would bring into the world the light of the first Shemitah of Olam HaToyu, through Chanoich in his generation, and through Moshe in their generation. And both of them changed history. Chanoich ensured the continuity of civilization, meaning he created a tremendous tikkun in the world, and Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, through Yetzias Mitzrayim and through Matan Torah. Now the question is, what does all this mean? What does it mean they come from a separate Shemitah? What's unique about that Shemitah? Why does it have to be transplanted into this? What is the Arizal talking about this previous world? That's what the continuation of the Maimer is going to explore. We will continue Be'ezer Hashem tomorrow. This evening, in honor of the Alter Rebbe's Yahrzeit, we'll have a Farbrengen. We'll learn some of his Torah also at 13 Olympia Lane. Tonight, 8:45 p.m. Everybody is invited. If you want to bring some food and drinks, it's in Farkash's home. Reb Dudi Farkash is in his shul over there, 13 Olympia Lane. Tomorrow morning, we'll continue the shir. And tomorrow morning, we're starting at 7:45, a shir in Masechta Megillah. Everybody is invited. Have a wonderful day.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.